Okay, good to go.
All right. Work sucks. I mean, yeah, weird way to start a speech on anarchism, I know. But if you think about it, work really does suck. I mean, you're working day in, day out for a fucking boss that doesn't give a damn about you at all. And if you say, oh, well, I don't really want to do that, well, good luck. You're going to end up dead or incarcerated, which obviously results in slavery because everyone knows that the prison industrial complex is kind of shitty. But here's the good news, things can change. The only thing is, you need people to actually listen and stand up and do something about it. And in my personal opinion, I think anarchism is the correct way in which to do that. So, first, I want to cover some fundamentals of anarchist thought. Big, huge thing that is the absolute cornerstone of every single anarchist thought is the idea of hierarchy. Hierarchy is basically if something has the ability to influence your life and you don't necessarily have complete control over it, that's hierarchy. So, the main question in anarchy is how do we question hierarchy and how do we determine what hierarchies are justified and what hierarchies are not justified? An unjustified hierarchy is one that does not hold fundamental merit to it. Or it's based upon arbitrary terms imposed by culture, tradition, what old men and what old white men in suits have to say. You get the idea. If it's not justified, the anarchist idea is to simply throw those hierarchies straight out the window. There's no reason to have them if they don't serve some kind of overall bettering of the community purpose. If it is justified, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but here's why hierarchy is a very, very big deal. Hierarchies impose restrictions upon you by someone making a decision that most commonly you really don't have any influence in. For example, there's plenty of instances around the United States where shit's getting voted in that most people just straight up are disenfranchised or unmotivated or whatever by the system so that they just don't make decisions. Or shit, the system in and of itself doesn't want people to participate in it. Because the more people that actually do participate in it, hey, you might actually get some fairness. Can't have that. So, how does anarchism get around hierarchy? There's two main things that I like to point to. The first concept is what I like to call horizontal hierarchy. In this system, basically everybody in a group has equal rights, voting, ability to influence decisions in a democratic way. What I like to compare it to is a worker co-op, for instance. The secondary thing is, well, you might say, oh, well, that wouldn't work very well on a plane or something like that. You don't want the stewardess, say, going up and just driving the plane whenever they want. But that's where justified hierarchies come in. Justified hierarchies essentially boil down to, can you do something? Yes, then you should do it. For example, a pilot piloting a plane. There's no reason why anyone else would pilot that plane, save for the pilot that is in the driver's seat. So, what this boils down to is that anarchy is fundamentally order without power to enforce the order. Let's examine the power structure that most contributes to order forced by power, the state. The state is the most obvious representation of hierarchy in the entire world. Obviously, there's not one unified monolithic state. That's kind of a silly idea, but every single state has fundamental controlling power over their populace. They might not get along on occasion, that's why you got wars and stuff, but fundamentally, the purpose of the state is to work in conjunction with the elements of power to exploit and oppress the people underneath it. In my opinion, using the state to try and cause that change or using the state to try and change what it is useless. It's pointless. You can't use something that has been built off of that much exploitation and even continues to use that kind of exploitation in order to affect actual lasting systemic change. So, what I personally believe in terms of an anarchist thought is the solution to this is forming secondary support structures that are completely separate away from governmental control, governmental influence, and basically relying upon mutual aid to individual members. Let me give an example of how the state screws with people and why it's not really that justified. Monopoly on violence. The state has a de facto monopoly on justified use of force. If you punch a cop, you get in trouble. If a cop punches you, cop doesn't get in trouble. And the real question you have to ask is, why? Why does it have to be this way? In my opinion, it doesn't have to be this way. Instead, you can very easily just circumvent it. There's no reason things have to be the way that they are. And what is most grating to me about this is, was anyone ever asked if they wanted to participate within the system? Was there something you sign at birth saying, oh, yeah, you can just, you just sign here and, yeah, the state will oppress you and everything is all good? No, you don't agree to this shit. You're just kind of thrust into it. There's no reason for you to be thrust into something like that from birth without some measure of consent. So, is it fair? Really, is it? Or, in my opinion, isn't fair. The entire point of us doing what we were doing, in terms of a leftist sense, in terms of an anarchist sense, is to achieve a more fair and more just world that represents each and every individual need better than what we have right now. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but better is what we need to strive for, because right now we're settling, and settling ain't doing it. So, how do we achieve this? And whenever people ask me this, I always say, oh man, I'm so glad you asked me this question, because I can tell you exactly how. I personally subscribe to the idea of anarcho-syndicalism. It was essentially established as a direct descendant from Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. The emphasis mostly relies upon forming workplace democracy through either unionization or forming worker co-ops. And instead of trying to work within the electoral system to actually get things done through there, we instead rely upon what's known as direct action, which is mutual aid, going out and doing picket lines, basically going out and doing the thing rather than hoping we can elect the thing. What would anarcho-syndicalism look like getting started? Well, let's go right back to work sucking. You're doing whatever it is you got to stay alive in our capitalist hellscape, and you say out loud, "Work sucks." Someone else that's working with you just looks over you and says, "Yeah, work kind of sucks." And in the IWW, that's something we like to call fundamentally solidarity. The action of bonding together with your fellow man against the hierarchies that fuck with you. Because, I mean, work is a hierarchy. You can't make decisions without your boss telling you, oh yeah, you can do that, or oh no, you can't do that. It makes no sense. That's a place where you spend 40 hours of your week, possibly more if you're working overtime, and you have absolutely no say in how those hours are spent. Now, again, is that right? Is that fair? I don't think so. So, you end up talking to this other person. And you find out you got a lot of complaints in common with the management and how things are run around here. You start talking more and more about this stuff, and you find out that the rest of the people in the shop also have the same problem. So you form a committee. Fast forward a few weeks, and you're still talking about workplace issues, and you've pretty much got yourself a proto-union talking about issues in the workplace without influence from your manager at all. That is the start of your ability to influence change and democracy within your workplace. So why is this important? Well, obviously, democracy in the workplace is what we should be striving for, period. If we have equal say and equal right in the workplace, each of us can influence the workplace in a way that will allow for basically us to do what we want to do. Now, here's the neat trick. The idea is to get all workers across the nation unionized. Doesn't matter how legal or not the unions are, what matters is that they're organized. Then we get something that the IWW calls general strike. Everyone stops working. Capitalism collapses. We pick up what's left of the factories and we rebuild society based upon anarcho-syndicalism. And I'm sure someone out there is saying, oh, that never happened. Yeah, it did. In Republican Spain, the CNT, the National Confederation of Labor, in conjunction with the FAI, the Iberian Anarchist Federation, formed an anarcho-syndicalist system that operated in much of Catalonia. It actually worked out pretty well for a number of years until, well, literal actual fascists under Francisco Franco, backed up by Hitler, decided, yeah, we're going to stop that. And all foreign aid to Republican Spain kind of ended concurrently. How I personally work to achieve it is I would do direct action, protests, picketing, all the rest of that with the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World. We actively organize labor throughout the nation, are active in major urban areas, including in Chicago. And we are one of the oldest still active labor organizations in the United States, formed in 1905 in this very city. And obviously, we're still around and we're still kicking. So, what the main question is how will anarchy manage to help everybody get through everything? And yeah, that's a very good question. So, oh, got a headache. So, what I like to boil this down to is every single one of us, every single day, has to wake up and do exactly the same bullshit every single day. I'm real tired of waking up in the morning and looking out the window and looking on the news and seeing people in jail cells. I'm real tired of having to go to work every single day and some shithead racist is my manager. And he says shit like, oh, I'm gonna kill, I'm so pissed off I'll kill a Jew. That doesn't fucking sit right with me. It shouldn't sit right with fucking anybody. It's absolutely fucking despicable. And it absolutely drives me up the wall that people are here defending this system that causes so much grief, so much harm throughout the world, internationally. And it's not just capitalism, obviously. Capitalism is definitely a major contributor, but capitalism works in conjunction with the state to get a lot of this shit done. So, the point is, we all need to be out here together. We all need to be out here together doing this shit, or else, well, we're going up against one of the greatest hierarchies the world has ever known. It has been a continuous building up over history throughout thousands of years, starting in the very early days of the Fertile Crescent where people first learned agriculture. And it was always, and these hierarchies have existed and built themselves over and over these thousands of years. And now we see all this shit. It's blatantly obvious. we're barely scraping by for scraps, so a bunch of greedy ass motherfuckers take everything for themselves and abuse the shit out of the legal system and everything else to do it. But what we have and what they don't have is that if we manage to get people, that's what they don't have. What we need to do is work together to get where we're going. Anarchism is the questioning of hierarchy, but it is also the challenging and ultimately destroying of hierarchy as well. And you bet your damn life that you aren't going to be out there alone challenging that, because the rest of us are going to be right alongside with you, walking that path, and holy shit, we're going to burn this motherfucker down. So that's my thoughts on anarchism.
Okay.
Hopefully that wasn't awful.